Hello everyone, back again with another tabletop. I know I said I was going to get out to the range and have some actual shooting videos this weekend, but my range day got cut extremely short. The weather was awful. It was extremely hot, and my phone kept overheating. I could not get any recording done. I could basically record about 45 seconds and the phone would just overheat and stop. So a little bummed about that, but I do have a few good video topics here that I'm going to record and put these out over the next few days. But before I get into today's video, I did just want to say, in the past little less than 2 weeks, I've gone from 32 subscribers to almost 500, which is bananas. I'm really encouraged to see that there's that many people that are still interested in the old ways and old guns, and it's just cool. It's really encouraging, and I'm really grateful you're all here. Even the ones that disagree, I'm glad you're here too. I'm trying to reply to every comment, but I've reached over like 250, 300 comments, and I have officially lost control. But I'm really glad you're all here. It's very humbling. So thank you. All right, so let's get right into the video. So today's going to be a little less serious than previous videos. This one's just fun and interesting to me anyway. I want to talk about very briefly the development in a very basic way about the personal defense pistol, or the personal pistol, I guess is a more romantic way to say it. Now, what I'm not going to do is go into history mode. Like I've said in past videos, See an Arsenal and Forgotten Weapons, channels like that, they're the kings, and I just don't have the time to do the scholarship that it takes to put out such wonderful historical information as they do, and so I'm leaving that to them. I'm not entering the ring at all. They're the kings. But I do know a little bit about these, and I have enough of these guns to give a good tasting, to quote John Wick, about some of the development of the personal pistol. So let's jump right into it. So I'm particularly fascinated with the Civil War era up into about 1911. 1920s, 30s, that's cool too, but that time frame from like 1850, maybe 1849 up to like 1928. I think that's the most interesting time for American guns. They're just so cool and innovative and clever. And but within that time frame, you saw a really huge leap forward, really in one generation, in personal pistol technology and the availability to all of us to really possess these guns and defend ourselves. So let's just go jump into a few of these. I'm going to put this one aside. Is the 1860 Army. So I've talked about in a previous video how Sam Colt kind of changed the world with this pistol, in the sense that there were a lot of black powder pistols and even revolvers around that time, but they were either too expensive or complicated to make. They couldn't make enough of them. There was really mostly a lot of one-off gunsmiths making guns that were fine, but if you had a problem with it, you had to go back to that guy who worked on it or designed it or built it. And so, personal pistols were a little bit hard to come by. A lot of people just kind of stuck with a rifle, like a flintlock. And when you look at old pictures and you read stories, that's what a lot of people had. They had a shotgun or a flintlock. Because that was the most reliable thing you could just grab, you could carry around with you, defend your family, hunt with it, all those things. And Sam Colt kind of changed the world, where now he figured out how to factory produce a reliable percussion revolver that works very well, is accurate, is light enough that you can carry it on your belt, hence they used to call them belt pistols, because its predecessor was the Colt Dragoon, which they called a horse pistol because you had to carry it on a horse. It was so big. And so Sam Colt figured out how to make factory manufacturing really effective and efficient, and he produced a slap ton of these 1851 Navies. This gun changed it all. And like I said in another video, he produced these and sold them in Russia and Canada and South America and England and all over the dang place. And it really gave people the ability to have a personal pistol. It's like, instead of having to carry a flintlock around or defend your home with a flintlock or a double barrel shotgun, you could throw this on your belt or throw it in a sash or under your belt or in a bag or whatever, and you've got 6 shots on tap. That's a big deal, man. And so, to me, and again, I'm not a historian here, so you please comment and tell me I'm wrong. I'm sure I am. But to me, this is the first big stake in the ground of, like, this is the first big jump forward from a musket flintlock. Right? From a single shot black powder rifle or a shotgun. This is a multi-shot weapon that, you know, you could reload pretty easily, and it worked, and it was available and kind of affordable, right? And then very quickly from this design, everybody just started trying to crank out their own designs. Of course, during the Civil War, you had the 1860 Army get developed, and then the 1861 Navy, which I didn't bring with me in here today, but I do have one of those as well. And basically, these are just a jump off of the 1851 Navy. The 1860 Army has a little bit bigger grip. The barrel's a little longer. It's got a reprofiled barrel and a different loading lever. They call this a creeping loading lever because it has these really interesting teeth that kind of grab in the barrel, and it's a much better loading system. You know, there's some developments forward, but it's not a huge jump from the 1851 Navy. During the Civil War, they started to get kind of some reports and understand a little bit about these guns. And one pistol that got developed throughout the Civil War and really into the mid 1600s was the 1858 Army. Now there was like, gosh, Blackie Thomas has a great video on this, who is another just king of all things black powder. I just revere that guy and respect him so much. But he's got a great video talking about some of the history on how this was developed. It went through a lot of companies and a lot of guys, and I can't recite that to you, but suffice it to say, this pistol went through a lot of development throughout the war, with a lot of end user input. And so this pistol is a tiny little jump forward from the Colt pistols, because these were called open top, right? And it makes for a beautiful gun, but the reality is this pistol, they can get a little finicky. You can have caps fall down in your action. The face of this cylinder can get really dry and dirty when you start firing, and it's mashed up against this forcing cone of the barrel, and basically it'll get so dry even after a shot or two where you can barely rotate the cylinder and fire the weapon. So you got to keep them wet quite often, and so that's a little bit of a problem. And also reloading this is a little slow, which I'm going to roll in some footage here of what that would look like. So a little bit of a jump forward from the Colt design pistols was the 1858 Army from Remington. And what made this pistol a little bit different is you have kind of a guarded and redesigned hammer area here where it's not so open to the elements. You don't have caps trying to blast out of there and get in your action and everything. You also have this solid frame, right? You got this nice chunk of steel up top. It kind of guards the cylinder and makes the gun just feel like an absolute tank. They also changed the way the nipples are on these cylinders, where they're kicked out a little bit, so that it's easier to load. And just overall, this pistol, man, apples to apples, it just works better. It is a more reliable, robust, simple pistol than the Colts, and they became really popular because of that. From what I understand, there was a fire at the Colt factory. I want to say mid-Civil War, and it was hard to get Colt pistols for a while, and so that was kind of a time for the Remington to shine, and a lot of people got them and really loved them. Another really cool feature is, you saw that footage of me, reloading an 1861 Navy. It's not the worst thing in the world. The cartridges make it a little easier than just carrying around loose powder and ball. But the Remington, besides being more reliable, check this out. You have the ability to pull out this rod, and the cylinder drops out. So I can carry multiple cylinders for the same gun. Now, from a soldier's or officer's perspective, maybe it's some kind of a lawman or gunfighter, maybe you would carry multiple cylinders. Maybe for the average civilian, you probably wouldn't. I can imagine this could get expensive. But even if you didn't carry extra cylinders, what's great about this design is it gives you the ability to very quickly take the gun apart, clean it, service it very easily, and get back to business. So this was a slight jump forward from the Colt designs. If I had to pick one to just take on the road with my family back in those days, it would be the 1858 Remington. It's just a more reliable pistol. So you go from the Civil War, and basically in the 1860s, you start developing these things called metallic cartridges. Now, I want to juxtapose that before we jump forward and just talk about let's say you carried an 1851 Navy, which a lot of people did. And this was your personal pistol. Most people, from what I've read and understand, would not carry around day to day a powder flask and a sack full of essentials, loose ball. You would go to the gun store, and you would probably get something that looks like this, a small tin of caps, and you would probably get a box of cartridges. Now these are all vintage designed. They're modern reproductions, but they're designed after what would have been purchased in a gun store in those days. All this is legit labeling. So you would have your caps in your pocket, and you would have this. This would be a sealed, waxed paper box, and you have this little piece of string you can see runs here, and you would tear that, and the entire box inside would be exposed, right? You tear that paper off, and now you have your paper cartridges. So that's your reload, okay? You could discard that box. It's not really worth anything. So this is what you would have carried in your pocket. Somebody like Wild Bill Hickok, he carried just two 1851 Navies. I don't even know that he carried a reload. Same thing for the 44 caliber. This is something that, again, you'd go in the gun store and you could purchase, and you have paper cartridges that make reloading a breeze. Whole lot faster than loose powder. Whole lot faster. Now, let's talk about how the metallic cartridges improved on the black powder. Now, the black powder actually had a couple advantages that the metallic did not. There were some people, and I can't remember his name, but there's a guy that has a great video on this talking about how some people, and Wild Bill Hickok's a great example, they could have gone to the 1873 Single Action Army, and they didn't. They stuck with their black powder pistols. So here I have a Single Action Army. This one's chambered in 44 Winchester centerfire. And so, you go from having paper cartridges and caps to now you have metallic cartridges. Now, I'll feed in some video here of what that's like for the loading procedure on this one. So you can see I can load and unload this pistol. Honestly, it takes about the same amount of time. When you consider unloading and reloading, it's about the same as a black powder. To me, the real advantage that centerfire cartridges gave you over the black powder cartridges was reliability. That's one. These were much more reliable. But two, this is something I hear a lot of people that they don't really talk about, and it is weather. If you've ever tried to carry powder, paper cartridges, even in a sealed wax box, in the rain, the lightest of rains, and the humidity, they are very hard to keep dry. Whereas a metallic cartridge, yeah, they're like really robust against weather, right? You'll notice people went from having to really wax seal their paper cartridges to carrying these out in the open on leather belts, right? The weather wasn't really a problem for metallic cartridges. Now, the advantage to me, if I had to pick one, I would still go with the metallic cartridge, for the weather reason that you can really preserve your cartridges. When it comes to reloading, let's say I've got my pistol loaded. Well, I'm going to use snap caps in this instance. I can't load all 6 of this cylinder if I wanted to carry this on my belt. Basically, you load one. I call this the Hickok skip. Hickok 45 talks about this a lot. You skip one, and basically you have 5 loaded chambers. Your hammer rests on an empty chamber. That's kind of a bummer because on my black powder, I can load all 6, and you actually have a safety notch in between the cylinders. And actually, the Remington illustrates this a little bit better. You can see these notches here. That's a safety notch, so I can pull the hammer back a little bit, and I can actually rest the hammer, and it'll lock in between 2 loaded cylinders. So I can actually keep 6 rounds on tap versus 5 of the Single Action Army. Again, reloads are about the same because, granted, it's a little slower to hand jack paper cartridges, but I don't have anything to unload with the Single Action Army. So you skip a step, but then the next step's a little slower. There's some great videos out there, but really, in terms of reloading, they're about the same, honestly. Now, if you have an 1858 Remington, and I'll roll in an awesome clip of Clint Eastwood here showing why the 1858 Remington beat them all. So this was a big leap forward in pistol technology. You have a centerfire gun, a more reliable cartridge. It's much more resistant to the weather, much more effective cartridge, I might add. I will say a 45 long Colt or a 44 Winchester versus even a 44 caliber black powder, there's no competition. So the next big leap forward, you know, we went from having to carry loose caps and paper cartridges in a box to centerfire cartridges, and then you get up into the early 1900s, and now you got the semi-automatic race, and there's the semi-automatic pistol development is just going crazy, and of course, enter the Colt 1911. This was the greatest leap forward. You know, you have black powder, you know, the 1851 Navy, really cool leap in. 1858, little jump forward. 1873, a big hop forward. And then the 1911, it leaped a century forward. I mean, John Moses Browning did something really incredible. I know there's a lot of other people that made pistols back then. Ain't nobody's compare with the 1911. Sorry. Even his later design, the high power, great pistol, but there's something about the 1911 that takes the cake. So I want you to imagine this was your personal pistol. It's not bad. It's a great gun. You know it well, right? But, you know, you fire, pull the hammer, fire, cock the hammer, fire, and you got this slow reload, right? Now all of a sudden you've got a pistol that you can pull the trigger as fast as you want and just throw in another magazine and you're good to go. That changed everything. Everything. And of course this is another reproduction of what a box of ammunition might have looked like back in those days. Got some nice Winchester military grade ball in here. So huge leap forward. And you know, now I will say during the early 1900s, I don't think a lot of people, civilians, carried the 1911. Maybe they did. Seems to me that the really small pocket pistols like the 1903 and little 22s and 32s and tiny little pistols were really kind of the thing as a personal defense pistol. But seems like post World War II, the 1911 was kind of the guy. It's just the pistol, all the way up into, you know, the 80s, and even to now. It's, you know, we're still fighting about it, but here it is, and it's still rocking. So, you know, that's kind of the video. I think it's really interesting to see the development and how you, as the end user, would kind of have to work with what you had at the time and why these little changes might have mattered to you. And I find it really interesting. Again, like I said in a previous video, these black powders connect you to history in a way that other guns just don't. So anyway, I'll keep it short as I can right there. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and we'll see you on the next one.